I thought this was an interesting article. I'll put a link in the description. And I'm going to read some. It said, what if the actual number of COVID cases were 1/10 the official report? Harvard doctor says it might be. Well, that's a real shock to some of us, right? It says, what if more than 5 months into this crisis we only had 1.8 million or so confirmed cases instead of 6.1 million? Or what if we only had about 600,000 instead of the 6.1 million? Would this calamity still be cause for shutting down the country's economy, schools, hospitals, pretty much everything but the post office, Walmart, and Home Depot were either shut down or restricted to the point of strangling their business to death this spring? More than 6 million cases might seem to justify such draconian measures, but would they seem justified if the true number of confirmed cases were only 10 to 30% of what we have been told? According to Dr. Michael Mina, who is an epidemiologist at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, the typically used PCR test for coronavirus might well be missing the mark by that much. The test takes a sample and replicates the DNA of the coronavirus present in the sample. Every iteration of the cycle replicates the virus present. According to the Times, the test is so sensitive that it can pick up even very tiny amounts of the virus DNA. To illustrate, say there are 10 little virus DNA pieces in your sample. If we copy those 10 little virus DNA pieces in the sample 30 times, that's almost 11 billion. If we run the test with 40 iterations, we'll get 10 billion or trillion, 995 billion, 116 million. That's almost 11 trillion little pieces. Increasing the iterations to the test by 10 increases the number of little virus DNA pieces by more than 1,000 times. The number of iterations required to justify as a positive test result is called the cycle threshold. Mina said some labs are using a CT that is too high, one that may be so sensitive it can generate a positive test result if a person has such a small amount of the virus in his system that he is not contagious, or even that the test can count a test positive when no live virus is present in the person. At such a high CT, the PCR test can multiply even dead virus fragments enough to generate a positive test result. Juliette Morrison, a virologist from the University of California, Riverside, said a CT of 35 should be adequate. Mina believes a CT should be 30 or lower. The labs that most states are using are declaring a positive test result if enough copies of the virus DNA are created in 37 or 40 iterations. The Times found data on CT values from labs in New York and Massachusetts. Analysis of this data revealed reducing the CT to 30 could have resulted in 70% fewer positive tests in New York and 85 to 90% fewer in Massachusetts. Assuming a similar reduction would yield similar results across the United States, we might be looking at 600,000 to 1.8 million coronavirus cases in the U.S. instead of 6 million plus. The experts, in parentheses, we have listened to and followed since March, should have known and understood how the test works and how a CT set too high could inflate the numbers. Well, I'm sure they did. But it says whether their error was intentional or accidental, this revelation should be reason enough to shatter any credibility they ever had. The time has come to stop listening to the, quote, experts who have been wrong more than right, who locked us up and shut us down, and who botched this whole testing regime so badly that we honestly have no idea how many real positive tests we have had. So, I thought that was interesting. It's not a shock to me. Might not be a shock to you. Might be, but I think that this is interesting, and as I said, I'll put the link in the description. As always, put your faith and trust in Jesus, and have a blessed day.